Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing. Today I'm creating on an 8x8 wood panel, creating this beautiful angel piece. We are never so lost that angels can't find us. These are some of the supplies that I will be using or thought about using. Some of them I did not, as you'll see as the video unfolds, as is often the case with this creativity. We discover things along the way that kind of change the route and change the items that we're using. So this piece was extremely fun to make, pure joy, and I got a lot of ideas from it that I plan to replicate in some other videos with some other stencils. So here I am just cutting down this vintage book page sheet down to fit the 8x8 surface there. And I'm going to be applying that paper with my Liquitex matte medium. And this is just a wood panel. It's pre-gessoed, and so it's really great to work with. It's similar to the gallery depth ones that I've been working on that I really enjoy. Unfortunately, Michaels used to carry these panels and they no longer carry them in store. So I only have the 8x8 size now and have quite a few of them. So we'll probably be seeing those more and more as I continue to use my stock here. So again, just giving a really good coating to that old book page. I did put the matte medium under as well as on top of it. The matte medium acts as a barrier, a sealant, as well as an adhesive. And here I just decided I wanted to go ahead and use some white tissue paper just to create a little bit more texture to that surface. I wanted the background to be somewhat subtle. I didn't want it to be too bulky with texture, but I did want it to have a little bit. So this was a perfect kind of in between three-dimensional texture that I could choose. So this is what I went with. And as you can tell, I'm just kind of crinkling it under my fingers. And as it hits that matte medium, it's sticking. And it just created a lovely, very subtle effect on the piece. At first, I did try to kind of wrap that tissue paper around the edges, as you'll see here in a moment. But then I decided I wanted my sides to be really clean so that I can just paint them black or in raw umber or something. I haven't quite decided, but so you'll see me thinking about folding it over the edges here and using the matte medium, but I decided I didn't like that. So I began just to fold up those little bits up onto the top of the panel, and then I tore off that extra bit on the top. But again, I loved the tissue paper. I haven't used it in a while. I used to use it a lot in my mixed media, so it was kind of nice to have that pop in my head as an option. So again, it's really subtle, and it's a really easy way to create some texture. I also wanted to bring some music pages in. It didn't really want a lot going on in the background, but the music pages just go hand in hand with angels, in my opinion. And so I really wanted to have that in there. This is one project that I really didn't see a whole lot of the background papers show through. Maybe if I looked a little bit closer, took some time, I could see them, but the piece turned out so beautifully that I just didn't even notice what I had really put in the background. But again, it's one of those things where you use the papers and the elements that speak to you, and sometimes you lose them in the background, and other times they show through in the most creative ways. So it's really quite a lovely surprise. I decided I would go ahead and pull out some scraps of just old rice paper that I had in my stash, and it's a great way to add a little bit more visual texture to the piece and get those pieces used. I also do this a lot with, if I'm doing an art journal page, I'll use bits of rice paper that I've saved because I really don't throw anything out in terms of, especially the rice paper scraps, because they are a little spendy. So I'm just applying those randomly here and there, just kind of looking at what's pleasing to look at and what won't be too overtaking in the piece. I didn't want the background to be the focal point. I wanted the angel wings, as you'll see in the end, I wanted those to really be the star. So, and I was successful at doing that. So again, I'm applying that with the Liquitex matte medium, both on the surface and on top. And as with any other process, I do dry between layers. So once this rice paper is all adhered, I will go ahead and dry it, as well as I dried the tissue paper layer to make sure that that was nice and secure, because you don't want those bottom layers to lift up. If they're wet, they will lift. And they can mess up the layer that you're on. So there's just a close-up of those bits of rice paper. Just beautiful. I love them. Rice paper is one of my favorite things to work with. It's just really, really beautiful. Often the designs are very subtle. Sometimes they're bold, but I tend to go for the more subtle ones. And here I am coming in with my raw sienna golden fluid acrylic and my golden satin glazing medium. And I'm going to go ahead and do a raw sienna glaze here. I wanted it to kind of have kind of a sunny tone to it, because my angel wings are going to end up being a cobalt turquoise, kind of darkened up, kind of vintagey and antiqued. So I wanted the sunny look of the raw sienna. And again, everything turned out just even better than I had planned. So it was quite lovely. I didn't bother drying in between here because I didn't really care if the yellow and green mixed. And I'm just using my small brayer with golden fluid acrylic in Sap Green Hue, and just randomly applying that around the panel. I wanted it to have kind of earthier colors. And so the Sap Green Hue is really nice. And it is actually one of my favorite colors as well, because it's very transparent. And here I'm going to go ahead and do a raw umber glaze. There's not very many projects that I don't do a raw umber glaze or a burnt umber light glaze, excuse me. And so I did go ahead and do that. So that's me just applying a really thorough coat of that glaze and then wiping it back with my baby wipe. And it did leave some behind, so you can see where it's catching on the paper, the edges of that background paper, which is really the look that we're going for at least when I do that. And then I decided to come in with my gesso and my palette knife and do my scraping technique, where I just apply that gesso randomly around the whole surface. It creates a really nice kind of matte texture to the surface, which was really nice. And this is where I think a lot of the background got sacrificed, because I used quite a bit of gesso. And I did decide, I had shown you some texture paste that was, sorry, I don't remember what it was called, but it didn't work. It was kind of shiny, and I didn't really want that for this project. So I went ahead and used my Liquitex modeling paste and mixed it with the Cobalt Turquoise. And again, my camera, unfortunately, is just an expensive webcam, and so it doesn't necessarily represent the colors as they are, as is the case here. It looks kind of baby blue there. It was not baby blue. It was turquoise, a light turquoise, but I was able to remedy that in a little bit later on down the road. So I went ahead and pulled a piece of thin cardboard from my stash. This is actually in some of the packaging that Shawn Petite stencils come in, and I always keep those because it's a medium weight cardboard, so it works great for a lot of things like this. So I decided to take Shawn's large angel wing stencil. It's a new stencil, and apply that modeling paste with the Cobalt Turquoise mixed in, and do it on that thin cardboard, because I wanted the wings I didn't want them to be part of the background. I wanted them to pop up off the background. And so I set that aside to dry, and then I went back to my canvas. So here I'm going to go ahead and give my panel a Cobalt Turquoise glaze. So again, that's the golden fluid acrylic in Cobalt Turquoise and the glazing medium. And I'm giving it a whole coat, and then I'm going to wipe it back with my baby wipe. When this part was done, it left a lot of white that I seemed to not be able to, it just like discolored the white, and I didn't like that bluish tone to it. So I came in with some clear gesso and gave the whole panel a layer of clear gesso to kind of seal that, that layer in. And that did allow me, as you'll see here in a few moments, it allowed my glazes going forward to have a little bit more punch and a little bit more impact. And the clear gesso does not change the color at all of the piece. And so here I'm going to try a raw umber glaze again. And that again is golden fluid acrylic, one of my favorite colors. Use it in almost everything. And so here, just giving it a really good coat, and then I'm going to wipe it back with the baby wipe. And I do kind of go back and forth. I wipe it back and then put another light layer on top to give it a little bit more depth in some places. And so as you can see there, you can still see some of that bluish tint, but it's a lot better than it was before the clear gesso. So here I'm going to go ahead and give it another light coat. Just using that remaining glaze that was on my table. And wiping it back. And there again, I think I was able to get rid of a little bit more of that bluish tint. In the end, I was able to fully recover that, and the background was absolutely gorgeous. Almost like you didn't want to put anything on top of it. And here I'm just coming in with my finger and the Cobalt Turquoise and just randomly putting that all around the panel. And I do the same here in a moment with the raw Sienna, golden fluid acrylic. They are my grab and go paints because they're sitting right at my elbow on my right side of my table, and I absolutely love them. They're easy to work with. They're very pigmented, and I really like them. They go a long way also. It doesn't take much to get the color that you want. And I like how I have in those raised parts, probably where the tissue paper is popping through, and we've got some white, which is nice to see. And in the end, it doesn't really show up a lot in the end, but it's okay. And here's another glaze with the raw umber and the glazing medium. You know, in this process, you can't really predict how it's going to go. You kind of just go with your gut and, you know, put another layer on if you don't quite like it. And sometimes the differences are very subtle, and sometimes they're more obvious. So I say do whatever your heart leads you to do. And again, usually it is exactly what needed to happen. So, and here is where you can see a lot of that white now popping up, probably because I've wiped and wiped and wiped the panel. So anyway, it worked out in the end. And here I have let that texture paste and those angel wings dry. And so now I'm going to go ahead and very carefully peel that off. I've never done this technique before. And so I was really, really pleased with the results. And I plan to use it more. I want to do this with some of Shawn's flowers stencils that I really struggle with creating a bouquet on the surface of my, the substrate of my project itself. And so I thought I could try this and see, because you can color the texture paste and then you can come in and add more color to it. And there was me just cutting that out. And because I used that lightweight or very thin cardboard, it was not difficult at all to cut out. And then here I decided I wanted to pull in some more of that turquoise. Again, as Shawn often says, it's a dance that you do. And there's a lot of back and forth as you just move through the project, intuitively trying to get to where you want to go and what you have in your mind that you want something to look like. This didn't turn out like anything I had expected. It very far exceeded my expectations. And so here this is one of my favorite techniques as well, is to use the corrugated cardboard to pop up whatever sentiment it is that I'm using. I do feel like I need to find another way to do my focal point, but I'm learning and I'm still playing, and I'm sure that something will occur to me. I did print my quote that says, "We are never so lost that angels can't find us." I printed it on tissue paper, and the way you do that is you just tape it, piece of tissue paper, to your copy paper, and then run it through your printer, and it is amazing. And so that's what I did, but you're going to see my big oops here in a second. But improvising is always in the mix when you're doing mixed media. So here I'm adhering that to my cardboard, but I just went a little bit too far, and it ended up tearing my tissue paper, and so I had to scrap that. But my printer, after it printed the one with the tissue paper on it, it printed another one on just the copy paper. And I thought, oh, that was really interesting. I didn't plan that. So I just zipped over to my printer and got that quote again. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to go ahead and adhere that to a thin piece of that cardboard, similar to what I did the wings on, and giving it a really good coat of the matte medium, because if you don't, when you try to do a glaze over it to color that paper, it can destroy your print, especially if it's it's off the copier or the printer, excuse me. And so that's why I give it a good coat of the matte medium. And so here I'm just cutting that out along those white lines, and then I do cut it down even a little bit more because I wanted it to be just a little bit smaller. So sorry for that. That's a little bit off camera. For some reason, I get so in the zone that I forget to look at my my laptop to see where I'm working in the frame, and if I'm in frame. I think for the most part I do pretty good, but I do forget from time to time. And so I'm going to be adhering that to that piece of corrugated cardboard after I prep that piece. And I'm prepping it with a layer of matte medium, and then I'll be using raw sienna and some cobalt turquoise on it as well. And here I'm going to come in with my favorite French script stamp. This is a penny black stamp, and my black archival ink from Ranger, and just applying that script here and there around the canvas. And as I've mentioned in videos before, I just really love the look of the script as a really subtle background accent. So, and here I'm gonna, it looks like I forgot about the raw umber glaze that I did here on the corrugated cardboard first before I came in and did the raw sienna. I decided I wanted to distress that little, the piece that has my quote on it. It didn't really do a whole lot. It just kind of gives it a rough edge. Well, I guess now that I'm looking at it, even as I'm talking, I do like that it's a little bit rougher than it would be if I had not done that. And so here I'm going to just use my finger and come in with some of the raw sienna. And I do dry in between these colors because I don't want it to make a different color. And so here's the cobalt turquoise, just giving it a little bit of accent here and there to tie in all the colors of the piece. The project ended up being fairly dark, but it was beautiful. It has enough of the raw sienna in the background to be just perfect. And because those wings were actually supposed to be more of a cobalt turquoise rather than that lighter blue that you see, I did just use some of the fluid acrylic and applied a layer to both of the wings. And then again, I let that dry. And then I'm going to come in with another raw umber glaze that's going to get that paint, that darker raw umber color into all those cracks and crevices of the texture there, so that you're not going to see any of that cardboard. And it was fantastic. I couldn't even believe how good the wings turned out. I can't wait to try it again, probably tomorrow. So here I'm going to do that raw umber glaze again. And I am being semi-fragile with the brush here, because even though the texture paste is dry, it's not completely set, and I didn't want to totally smush it and ruin it. So I am being fairly gentle there. But as you can see, the raw umber gets into those little cracks and fills in all those spaces. And then I do wipe it back, similar to just a glaze on the canvas. And I loved the just really deep and dark kind of antiqued old look that this gave the wings. Just absolutely beautiful. And there's just a close-up of that. I can't wait to try it again. So incredible. It might be the solution to some of my problems in creating. I have some blocks in creating things with the floral stencils from Shawn. I have these grand ideas about creating bouquets and stuff, and it just never really turns out. So hopefully this will be my thing I can try and that will work. And so there you just saw me doing the same with that raw sienna with my brayer. I just wanted to bring back some of that sunshiny color to lighten up the piece so that it had a good balance between lights and darks. And here I'm just using a little bit of that leftover raw umber glaze around the edges of my quote. Again, it says, "We are never so lost that angels can't find us." I saw that on Facebook. It didn't give the author. It was just this cute little person. I think it was a child that's standing in front of a door, and it had these words on it. I just fell in love and knew that eventually it was going to be a piece I would need to create around. And I very much believe in angels, and they are very precious to me. And so there I was just adhering my sentiment to my corrugated cardboard piece, using my Liquitex heavy gel, because it is, there's a lot of texture underneath that quote that needed to be able to get, that adhesive needed to get into those crevices. And here I decided to come in with my raw sienna and the Cobalt Turquoise just to kind of accent a little bit on that, that sentiment piece. And then I did wipe it off a little bit. I didn't want it to be too dramatic. And so here I get to put on the wings, which was so fun. I couldn't get over how flexible the wings were. Oh man, I forgot that I came back in and decided I was going to do some stenciling. This was not planned at all. I just looked at the piece before I got ready to put those wings on, and I just knew it needed something else. And so this is Shawn Petite's Mediterranean Mini stencil, and contains all of my favorite stencils of hers. And then the second one is the vintage postage. And just to create a little bit more accent to the piece and balance it out. And so it was just enough to give a little bit more interest to the background without being overpowering or ending up taking away from the focal image, which was the wings and the sentiment. So here I get to put them on. And so again, I'm using the Liquitex Heavy Gel because it is, the wings they're not thick, but they're heavy. I guess because of the cardboard and the moisture that it's made out of with the texture paste and the paint and all of that. So there I'm just placing it on my right side, crossing my fingers and hoping that I can get them straight. I often don't get them straight. And so you'll see me kind of fussing with that to make sure that I have the same amount of space to the right and the left of the wings so that it's centered as best as I can make it without actually measuring, which my OCD would want me to do, but I don't do that anymore. So I just don't worry about those things as much as I used to. So there, I'm just kind of standing the canvas up or the panel up so that I can see it straight on and make sure that they're straight. And there, I'm just using my towel so that I don't have sticky fingers touching that texture. Just making sure that those are just well adhered, and they were absolutely amazing. Amazing. Wow, I'm just blown away. Made me very happy. And here I'm going to go ahead and adhere the corrugated cardboard with the sentiment on it to the center of those wings and finish the piece off. I hope that you liked this video. I had a great time creating it. And if you have not already liked and subscribed to my channel, I sure hope that you do. When you do that, it helps YouTube to know that there are people out there that like the content that I'm creating, and I will come up in searches a little bit more frequently. So here I'm just going ahead and giving my Soho Soft Pastel edging to the piece. I don't shade anywhere else. I just shade it around the edges. So again, I just so hope that you enjoyed this, that you learned something, and I hope that you'll come back and check out the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Blessings. Bye-bye.